1 o'clock. I am calling to order. Oh, you ready, Sharon?
Yep, got you recording.
All right. Calling to order the meeting of the Chesapeake Beach Ethics Commission at 1 p.m. on November 17th, 2020. First order of business is Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United
States of America and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. First substantive item on the agenda is approval of the minutes for the November 10th meeting. Has everybody read them?
Yes.
Anyone have any corrections or additions or improvements?
No, it's fine.
All right. The minutes of the December 10th meeting as submitted are approved. All right. Next items are discussions of potential improvements in various things. We've got it set so we start with the disclosure forms. Is that all right with everybody?
Sounds
Sure.
good.
Okay. All right. I'm happy to say we got 5 written comments.
Yes, that was nice.
And did everybody get, I made a summary of them.
Correct.
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
So does anyone see any errors in the summaries?
No.
And number with Mr. Morris, I think we need to add one thing.
Yeah.
He does note that I guess maybe a couple of the individuals were surprised to learn that their disclosures were made publicly available, and
Okay.
that suggested that perhaps we need to tell the applicants about that up front, which I think is
Okay.
a fair comment.
Yes. Okay. So I'll get this back to you guys. Under Morris, number 3 is notify the filers that this is all going to be public. All right. Why don't we just march through?
That sounds good.
Fred, Jonathan Evans and others say that asking about the income of family members only, even though that income comes from entities that have nothing to do with the town of Chesapeake Beach, is silly. Fred, are you satisfied that it's nevertheless required by the state law?
Yes, Phil.
Is that a yes to the answer?
Yeah. Yes, it was. I'm sorry. It was yes, Phil.
Oh,
I
okay.
said yes.
All right. All right. So go back. Does the state law require us, in what we're using Form C, to demand disclosure of income of family members, even if that income comes from entities that have nothing to do with Chesapeake Beach?
And I believe that it does.
Okay. I'm thinking with this and maybe some other stuff that, we've got plenty of time, by the way. I enjoy looking at this stuff now, even though I don't have to make any changes for a couple of months. I'm thinking of recommending to the town council that it petition the state to modify its requirements so that this and the disclosures about real estate in Ohio are not required. Because I think it's just, it's a pain in the neck, and it unnecessarily tends or would have the tendency to discourage people from serving.
And all they can do is say no.
From somebody.
And I'm thinking it should be the town council rather than us. Mike and Ingrid.
I'm not sure if Fred made a comment. There was some weird sort of staticky thing going on.
Okay.
Yeah,
I'm
I think I
thinking-
lost the connection.
Okay. I'm thinking the request should come from the town council rather than us. So we would
Well-
recommend to the town council that it contact the state and ask for some kind of leniency here.
Fred, why wouldn't that be us contacting them? I'm not sure if I understand your logic.
I was the one who said that.
I'm sorry, Phil. I was
I don't
calling you
know.
Fred. Sorry.
Well, the requirement really comes through the town's ethics ordinance,
Right.
via a derivative from the state. And that's a legislative matter, a legislative policy, by the town council. So it may be the council doesn't want to make that request. So I think that is something that should go through the council. The council may say to the commission, all right, commission, we're okay with that. Go ahead and make that request on behalf of the town. But I'm not sure that's something that should be done unilaterally by the commission.
Yep, I agree, Fred.
All right.
And no, we have nothing to lose by asking for that exemption, and it would make things less onerous.
Yeah. And we're coming to them from a position of we're stronger than the state's requirements in other areas. No, we're not trying to weasel out of anything.
No, I mean, we don't lose anything by losing this information.
Yeah. Yes.
So Phil, which item are we talking about now? 'Cause I know the commission has had a discussion before about the disclosure of real estate holdings beyond the corporate limits.
Yeah.
And there's a difference between real estate holdings in Idaho and real estate holdings somewhere within the general
Yeah.
geographical area of the town or even
Really?
the state.
And they've allowed that distinction?
No, I'm not saying, but I'm saying, I'm asking the question of, is it your contemplation to ask for a full exemption so they don't have to disclose anything outside of the town, or a more limited exemption where, and I don't know what the parameters should be, but something beyond the corporate limits of the town, but beyond what reasonably would expect it to be the area of influence around the town.
Well, for example, when we extended the full or very large disclosures to the appointed officials, which is not required by the state. For real estate, we said within the town limits or within 10 miles of the town limits. Actually, that was the town council itself, I think, came up with that. Yeah, so it would be whatever could possibly be affected by decisions by the town of Chesapeake Beach.
It would seem to me, and pardon my, just interrupting here, that one way of looking at it is town of Chesapeake Beach and Culver County, without a specific geographical area limitation, or 10 miles and Culver County. Anyway.
All right, well, this is a preliminary thing. Let's everyone, I'm not going to do anything until our next meeting. So everybody listen to these options. And
It seems like it would be nice if the mileage or the distance or whatever was consistent, so that we don't ask for 10 miles for one group and then another group is Calvert County. I guess we have to have a good reason for having a distinction if we're not going to have it all similar.
Okay, yeah.
I agree with Ingrid. I think we should keep it similar and try to, we have that 10-mile radius around Chesapeake Beach, keep that,
And by the way, that means one of the things the 10-mile limit does is it covers part of Anne Arundel.
Right.
There are apparently, I'm told, there are decisions made by the town that affected, I guess, Harrington Harbor or between North Beach and Harrington.
Right, you get the sewage line that goes up to Rosehaven.
Okay. All right, well, let's say everybody think about it. And on the other hand, if for some reason we wanted to do Calvert County plus 10 miles, then we would amend it for the appointed officials as well. I think
Mhm.
consistency makes sense.
Yes.
And another thing, possibly make it 500 miles. I mean, so I don't think, I think the 10 miles or 15 miles makes the best sense. But all right,
Yeah.
let's think about that for next time. And we've just talked about the Jaworski comment, which is Charlie thinks as well. Fink also says, with some persuasion, how much information do we need about, we have the address. I own this house, where I live, right? Why do we need all the information about who you bought it from 25 years ago and who the mortgage holder was?
I agree with that, Phil. I mean, I would support that if we can do it. I mean,
I would think that one might be asked if you bought it within the past 3 years or something that could conceivably, affect your views on something. I don't know, I guess. I mean, I think the notion is somehow, if you got the mortgage from PNC and PNC wants to, move someplace that's currently in a residential neighborhood or, needs some kind of permission to do something from the town council, well, then maybe when knowing that you were going to run for office or knowing that you were in office, they gave you a special interest rate. I mean, I can understand that concern, but that's got to be time limited. What was the market value when you bought the house in 1982?
right. I kind of like that concept of having a time, frame within like 5 years or something like that. But
Yeah,
in 20 years is, you don't even remember, what the
yeah,
price you paid or who you bought it from.
yeah,
They
yeah.
do
I
all
mean,
that research. It's a pain in the ass.
I fortunately I have a wife who has a good memory. Okay.
Well, I would just note that the requirements that are in the financial disclosure forms are drawn directly from the town's ethics ordinance. So
Yeah,
it's
we'd have
gonna
to
be
change the ordinance.
Yeah, have to change the ordinance, right?
Okay, yeah, good point.
And,
Let's,
and the ordinance is pretty parallel to what is in the model promulgated by the State Ethics Commission.
yeah,
So
so we'd have to get permission from the state. Probably. Right, I mean, leave aside what's in the model, I believe that this detailed information is required by the state law to be disclosed by members of the state legislature.
correct.
And we have to have this a disclosure that's at least as strict as the state law. But that's, we'll see about it may even be that we'd actually have to ask for the legislature to amend the law or provide the authority to the state commission. But again, I think somebody ought to point this out. And I think a good thing about this exercise we've done is it's not the three of us saying, oh, this is a pain in the neck. We now have several people who filled out the form who directly question the reason for for doing that work. So, in fact, what we might want to follow up before we do anything with the state is also go to the town members of the town council, those who didn't respond, and ask them what their thoughts are. All right, well, we'll keep thinking about that. Charlie Fink also suggested that there be a message or set of messages to the filers. Without going into detail, I think it's a great idea. Here's
like that idea of keeping the line of communication open so they don't feel like it fell into a black hole and they don't know what's going on.
That would be something I think we would just, when we get to substantively reviewing our rules of procedure, um, either put that in directly or his suggestion directly or modify it somehow. But yeah, I think that would be much better than what we're doing. All right, then we have Randy Gattman. Now, I meant to look at what the previous version of the ordinance was. I thought that what's currently in the ordinance came from him directly.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah, because I remember him coming to the meeting and providing us input.
Well,
Right.
my input language, he written.
Yeah,
He wrote it up.
Okay, I'm not sure. Again, I'll follow up with them unless somebody convinces me otherwise. He says to us that the election law says that in order to be a candidate, certified as a candidate by the Board of Elections, you have to submit a disclosure statement complying with the ethics ordinance. All right. So
okay.
I think it's consistent with that the Ethics Commission has to judge whether the submission complies with the ethics ordinance. And I think that's what the current ordinance says. If we have to notify the Board of Elections if a submission is, quote, facially incomplete or defective. And I mean, that's so, but Randy says if we had done that this time around, he doesn't see how the Board of Elections is authorized to keep a person off the ballot. I think it says you got to do a disclosure statement complying with the ethics ordinance, but I would suggest that the town amend its election law to say the words. If the Ethics Commission determines that the disclosure is facially defective or incomplete, the Board of Elections may not certify that candidate.
Because isn't that the whole point of the exercise of the financial
Yes.
disclosure?
Right.
Well,
I agree.
So, all right. That's, unless I hear dissent, I'll write to Randy pointing out that's our understanding and that we're happy with making it unequivocal in writing, so there's no implications you don't have to draw any inferences. But it seems to be the only possible reading of their law. And we then we go to Greg Morris. Yeah, I think he correctly says that Form A needs to be just maybe even redone, but from scratch. We certainly need to make clear, and I think not in small print, got to be a separate Form A for each piece of property you own.
Yes.
That says Form B actually says that. I don't know if anyone sees it. One of the forms. Well, in any event, any place where that makes sense, we have to rewrite it to say that. Then we have, he repeated the point he made in an email to us before the election. It shouldn't be sufficient for the commission to simply determine that a disclosure is not facially incomplete or defective. The commission ought to investigate questionable disclosures, for example, those revealing a conflict of interest, and decide if that should disqualify the candidate. that if that's a good idea, it would require amending the ordinance. It's a funny thing that it would affect only incumbents who are running for re-election, because a non-incumbent can't be guilty of a conflict of interest while he's, right?
Correct.
Well, but Phil, I think that whole facially incomplete thing bothered me when we were going through that, because I felt like, not that I saw any conflicts of interest, but I felt like we shouldn't be just happy that there's something in a box or on a line. If it didn't make sense, then we should question it. I kind of felt like, well, if there was something written in, okay, that satisfies the facially complete. Because remember, I
Yes.
asked, what exactly does that mean? I didn't know what standard we were using. And it sounded like it was just, well, as long as it's filled in, there's something there and that's good enough. And I understand, not that we're auditing these forms, but it does feel like we should be using some level of judgment to figure out, well, does that make sense? If there is something that's, I don't know if I want to call it semi-obvious, where it's like, well, that can't be right. As an aside, a long time ago, I actually did work as an auditor on financial disclosures up on Capitol Hill. And we did a very fine grain, if there's an asset here and there's income there, well, then those two, the asset should be producing some income. Or if somebody claimed income, where's the asset that's producing the income? I mean, so we're doing a very granular kind of assessment on those disclosures. And I'm certainly not suggesting anything of that sort, but it does seem like we should be exercising some judgment. And so anyway, I'll shut up.
Well, if I may, let me bring to your attention your rules of procedure, which provide that all members of the commission must review each financial disclosure form for, one, any disclosure that appears to have the potential to be or have the potential to appear to be a conflict of interest, and two, completeness of the submission, i.e. name on every page, each section marked, including the word none, written where the filer has nothing to claim, legibility, having an original signature, etc. So I think your rules give examples of the types of things that would lead something to be complete or not complete.
But does it go deep enough, Fred, in terms of there might be something there, but if we look at it and we ask ourselves, well, yeah, they answered it and there's an answer, but does it make sense?
Well,
Let me take the next provision. The commission will approve by a recorded vote any disclosure form which appears complete and discloses no apparent violation of provisions of the conflict of interest article of the ethics ordinance. So your rules of procedure tell you that you're supposed to look not only at completeness, but any apparent violation of the conflict of interest provisions.
So it does go another layer of the onion, so to speak.
Yes.
I'll tell you, Fred, I really appreciate your noticing this, because I hadn't checked that. And so
But
And then it tells you what to do if you do notice an apparent violation or a potential violation.
Right.
Fred, is there a delineation between reviewing for, a violation for a candidate versus somebody on? Is there a distinction in there?
No.
Okay.
maybe there should be. I mean, we lucked out. Oh, let me follow up on everybody's. I took it upon myself to notify one of the candidates that his, I think it was Form C, omitted to repeat what had been in an earlier disclosure, that his wife worked for somebody who contracts with the town, right?
I remember that.
Now, in retrospect, we got to think this through. First of all, I shouldn't have done it on my own. You know, what we did is it saved his candidacy. Because if we hadn't made that notification, then his political opponents could say, he's lying about, he's, trying to hide the fact that, his wife works as a officer of this company that gets a great deal of money from the town and blah, 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 blah. That's not exactly what Greg's getting at. And it's not what Fred just quoted from. So I think we need to think through, and I think that it's one thing to say in the April submissions, we need to look at and see if they disclose any conflict of interest and pursue it as if a complaint's been filed, or at least, make inquiries. This notion that Greg's notion is that we should disqualify candidates because we look at the disclosures and determine that the candidate is currently violating the conflict of interest rules. He may actually be meaning, from the disclosures, if candidate Smith wins, he can't take office unless he quits his job.
Right.
Because he's disclosing that he works for a contractor. I think that those are really legitimate political issues.
I agree. I think
Yeah.
it's a huge responsibility if in a 2-week time frame, we have to make a determination that the form is filled out correctly and that he's not violating any conflict of interest, and that we don't even give him an appeal process.
Right.
And he loses his ability to apply for an elective position.
Yeah.
I just don't think that's right.
There are due process considerations there.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, then why don't we expand the time frame so that we can do the job we want to do?
Well, that gets into the election law.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I guess we have to decide what we want to do and how much time we need, and if we need to change that timeline again.
I'm stuck on, if I were running for office, I would look at the disclosures of my opponents and, make a political issue. Or another way of looking at it, I look at the disclosure and I file a complaint with the commission saying, this guy works for a company that has a contract with the town. The commission I don't think we want to decide that issue within 2 weeks.
No.
But
And the commission, I don't think would have the jurisdiction to do it because the person is not a covered person, not an employee or official of the town at that point.
Yeah, they have
it could be an incumbent.
Unless
for
it's
re-election.
incumbent.
on an incumbent we would.
Yeah, I would, it would not cover a non-incumbent. Can't be a violation. Although, again, I think, the challenger to my re-election, works for a company that has a town contract, and unless he or she says, if elected, I will quit my job, then you shouldn't vote for the person because he or she can't take office. But that's not for the Ethics Commission to advise, I don't think. That's
I agree.
for either the politicians or, we've been lucky, well, I won't say, or a newspaper, or any interested, anyone in town. And that, gets to the public. That's why it should be public. The benefit is that, in a hotly contested election, people get to, should look. All right, well, anything else on that? I mean, we're just gonna, I'll probably end up, because I can't resist the temptation, drafting stuff that we can look at next meeting. I would like to, though,
One thing that we also, I guess we should add to Morris is that he did mention maybe we could make it a PDF so that people could fill it out online and it makes it a little easier on them. And much more legible for us too, to read.
It is that.
Is
should be
it?
filled out online. Yeah, I did it. Yeah.
Because most of them were handwritten, it seemed. And
Well,
that
all
was,
right, there's no instructions.
that's true.
Or it may be you have to have a reasonably sophisticated Adobe. The answer is yes. Thank you for reminding us, and that should be acknowledged, and it ought to be, if it's already set up so that any candidate can fill it out online, then that has to be, just made clear. If there's problems, then we should overcome those problems.
Because it certainly is to our benefit, makes it much, much easier to read.
Absolutely. And yes, and would eliminate some of the BS that we got.
Yep.
Can we also put like an electronic signature? That's the problem I had when I filled out the,
Yeah, all right.
some type of electronic signature.
Oh, that's right. I remember a couple of people had problems with that. They had filled it out, but then they couldn't sign it.
Yeah.
Right. I was one.
So they filled it out online, but they couldn't.
No.
No, they filled it out as a downloaded PDF.
Right, and that's what I did, but I couldn't figure out how to do electronic
Okay,
signature.
yep.
Yep.
All right, now, here's the deal, guys. I have no pride of authorship. In fact, the reverse. I would like to not have the assignment of making these improvements in the forms. I think somebody else should volunteer for that. And I also think, as a matter, it may be desirable to ask the town to, spend $1,000 or two, having a professional
I agree with that,
last
Phil.
step.
Definitely not my forte, and it would take me a lot of time and it wouldn't look good. I can guarantee you that. That's not an area of strength for me.
It's not an area of strength.
But there are two levels. One is, what should be on Form A. All right. And then, somebody, making it, look professional.
Well, we can do a hand markup on it then, and then hand it off.
Okay, but I would like somebody other than myself to be the responsible person.
Okay, I'll try Form A. If you send the electronic version to me. and
Okay,
I'll work on that and get.
I appreciate that. All right. And we're not, no hurry, that's a
Okay.
good thing. Okay.
Yours, right?
What's that? All right. Okay, next is rules of procedure. I don't have anything on that. Did anyone else look at it? And
Nothing other than Fink's right now. I didn't look at it either.
okay.
We just have to incorporate Fink's ideas.
And also, I suppose they should be rewritten if and when the ordinance gets revised.
Right.
Okay. All right. I sent out a couple of days ago suggested changes in the current ordinance. And I'd like to go through them. I think the first one's on page 7.
I remember getting that. Do you remember what day that? Let me pull up the email. Hang on a minute. Do you remember what day that was, Phil? That
I
you
can
sent?
look. Hold on. Just a second.
Okay, thank you. I know we had a lot of emails between you and Sharon. I thought I had caught them all, but maybe I didn't.
What day you say, the second?
Oh, wait a minute. I think I see it.
It was, no, the 12th.
I see it now.
Okay,
Just- Let me just open it up. Let me see if I looked at it or not. Nope, I didn't. Okay.
Okay.
With you.
all right. It doesn't matter. I mean, because we don't have to decide anything. Let me just bring your
Right.
attention to,
Oh,
where are we, Skype? Okay, all right. First one is on page 7, section 2516. We talk about advisory opinions. We say where conduct presents an appearance of a conflict of interest, somebody can ask for an advisory opinion. I think it would be better where conduct might present an appearance of a conflict of interest.
Here's one thing. Okay. Where conduct presents an appearance.
Yeah, that sounds good. That's good.
I mean, the thing is we don't want somebody to admit, you can't get an advisory opinion unless you say the situation presents a conflict of interest, appears to.
I think good change.
Okay, let's see. You guys also should go through this way. All right, 25 on page 9, section 2522. I did not do what we promised Larry Jaworski we would do, which is create a provision for if a council member recuses himself or herself on a budget item, to create a way that he or she can still vote on the overall budget. I think this is something that would be a change not in the ethics ordinance, but in whatever governs the town council.
The charter.
The charter, okay. Well, I think I would think we would just report to the town council. This is something that they should change their procedures so that when there's a recusal, I don't think that should be in the ethics ordinance.
I agree.
I,
Yeah.
I agree with you, Phil. And, certainly there are issues about the council process, the budget process, the ordinance adoption process, and whether or not it's even feasible and practicable to segregate, certain 1 or 2 budget items from
Yeah.
the rest of the budget for purposes of voting.
Okay, but we will communicate that to the mayor. I would think it would fall within the expertise of the town attorney. And I think it would be of interest. I know one other council person was possibly in this position. She raising money for a project that got, a town grant. Okay, well, tentatively, we're going to refer it to the council to deal with. Also on that page, 2523 is employment and financial interest restrictions. And, well, I'll skip that for a second. In 2523 B, we say a covered person may not be employed by or have a financial interest in any entity that is subject to the authority of the town or negotiating or entering into a contract with the town. I think there should be a new section C that says a covered person may not serve as an officer or director of an entity that requests or receives a grant from the town.
Phil, what's your thinking on that as to the why? Isn't the issue really, once the request come to the town, that the individual should in no way, shape, or form be participating on behalf of the town?
That's
And,
clear. That's already, yeah. Boy, I just instinctively, you're asking the right question. Mike,
And I'm not
anybody-
taking a position one way or another on it.
No, but that's the
but-
question. Well, I mean, we say that if you are employed by the entity, let's see, if you're employed by an entity that has a contract with the town, you can't, you have to quit. But if it's not a contract, if Company A gets $50,000 from the town in return for supplying goods or services. Entity B gets $50,000 from the town in recognition of the fact that it provides services that are desired by the town, like fire, emergency techs. What is the distinction? And what I'm proposing here doesn't go that far. It says you can't be a officer or director. You could be employed by the grant recipient.
Is it a question of perception that citizens may perceive that there is some impropriety if you have a covered person working both sides of the fence, so to speak?
Yeah. Or yeah, so I mean, let's take a hypothetical case of a member of the town council is on the board of directors of the volunteer fire department. He or she has a fiduciary duty to the fire department to get money from, or, in this area, raise money, facilitate raising the money that the department needs. I don't know how you easily square that with the fiduciary duty of a member of the town council to not spend money. They're just set of priorities, and
But if we
But
have,
does it, go ahead, I'm sorry, Mike.
yeah, if we had that issue where he basically recuses himself from that budget item for the town, then he wouldn't have that conflict. Okay, so that he recuses himself from the town when he makes a vote on the budget for the fire department.
But I guess we haven't established that he can do that and that we can segregate those votes.
Yeah, well, that's something we have to talk to the town about, whether
Yeah,
their budget allows them to, segregate everything into one budget or into multiple different budget items.
But I think the bigger question is, where is the duty of loyalty? And it's not, it could potentially go beyond just grants and money. There could be other operational issues where paths could cross. And as an individual is sitting on a board of directors or serving as an officer of an entity out there in the community, looking after the interests of that entity and its constituency, isn't there at least a potential that that individual will be compromised in his duty of loyalty to the town and to the town citizens on the same issue?
yeah, the question is, wouldn't that be taken care of by the recusal?
Well, yes, it could be, but wouldn't this same issue about the grant be satisfied by recusal?
Yeah, I mean, the only time they interlink or overlap is when it comes to the budget issue, because the ability of the town has no ability to control how the fire department's managed or run. It's actually run by the counties, what I think Larry was telling us before, and there's really no overlap in authority or regulatory authority over how the fire departments run. It's only an issue of regarding the budget where there's an overlap of responsibilities.
what if there were some land use issue affecting the fire department property, its facilities, et cetera, that was within the jurisdiction of the town? Couldn't there potentially be an area of overlap there? I'm not saying that it's likely to happen,
Right.
but there may be some regulatory, avenues where there could be some crossover.
That's a good point. Yeah, that could happen.
Who governs the Fishing Creek? Does this town have any say about docking and that sort of thing?
Yeah, the town actually has some authority. There's one of the boat ramps is actually run by the town. Okay, it's a lease agreement with Department of Natural Resources owns it, but then they have a easement on there, so the town controls it for 30 years. So,
Okay. I mean, that's another play. I mean, I could imagine that the fire department would want to change where they dock their emergency boat.
right.
There's no budget item, but it would affect the town policy. But I guess I'm trying to wonder if as long as there's a real recusal, not just not voting, but not total recusal, don't participate in any way. Whether that would take care of the concern that led me to draft this. There's an answer to my concern that what's the difference between this and working for somebody as a contract is the current language is required by the state law. Current language may go too far.
Right. I think the difference between working for a contractor is that in the case of the contractor, there has the ability for that individual to profit in a financial realm.
I see. Okay.
In general, and probably with a fire department board of directors, you're probably not going to profit financially. You're going to be doing it for the interests of the fire department rather than an individual interest. So that would be the only distinction I would see.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's again think about this for the next while.
Okay.
If we did make this change, then we'd change the heading to somehow refer to service, and employment, and financial.
Phil,
Page 10.
Before
Yeah.
we go further, I was just looking at this while we were talking, and I see back on page 6, under section 2512 records, part B, we've lined it out, the at least 4 years from date of receipt. What
Yeah.
do we?
Oh, I'm sorry. I think it's permanent now. I mean, by definition, I didn't notice that this morning when I was looking at this. I mean, I think this 4-year thing was when everything was on paper and the state was mandating that the town not be allowed to throw everything out every year. They had to maintain it for at least 4 years. So that's all.
Are we just saying it's retained indefinitely?
Yeah, forever.
Okay.
It may be better to leave it as it is, but at least let's think about that. And thank you for catching that. On page 10, use of prestige of office. We certainly say currently say a covered person may not intentionally use the prestige of office, etc. I somehow feel better if it's knowingly use or knowingly or intentionally use.
Yeah, that sounds good. I don't have any problem with
Yeah,
that.
I don't have a problem with that.
Let's see, gifts. We say may not accept a gift directly or indirectly from a person that the official or employee knows or has reason to know is doing business, etc. I think it's person or entity.
Yeah, that sounds good.
And then add, you can't receive it from anyone who's doing business. has financial interests that could be affected, is engaged in activity regulated or controlled, and then add has or is likely to request or receive a grant from the town.
I agree.
Yep.
Let's see that. All right. Next change is page 12. We dodged a bullet, ladies and gentlemen. The current law says in the content of statements 2533, in this case, interest in real property, starts out saying for appointed officials, the addresses of property within 10 miles. For elected officials, a list of all interests in real property wherever located, and for each property, the statement of, et cetera, left out candidates for election.
Whoops.
Well,
Yeah, that's a good one.
oh,
That was an
Living document.
okay.
same thing on page 13, big section B. Okay. All right, all the rest of it is, I've drafted a change in our handling of complaints to actually make it now that if we determine there are, that we do hold a hearing, if the town is willing to pay for a hearing examiner.
Yeah.
See, I'm totally against the standard process, which is in the model, which is that somehow we as a commission hold a hearing. Because I don't, I was a lawyer for 40 years and I don't know how to hold a hearing for, it's a skill. I mean, it's something you have to learn. But we can, I mean, the American Arbitration Association and maybe other groups, for a fee, you can hire them to hold a hearing. And then I guess, well, all right, so look at this, not right now in detail, but trying to say if there isn't a hearing because the town doesn't want to spend $3,000 or whatever it costs to have a hearing examiner, then we could take the case to court instead. And what I'm anticipating or suggesting, normally, for example, labor arbitrators decide cases, and the Merit Systems Protection Board decides cases. I'm thinking more limited. The hearing examiner listens to the witnesses and reads the documents and recommends findings of fact. First of all, we're not bound by that. But more importantly, we make the final judgment as to, given whatever the facts are, was there a violation of the ordinance?
Mm-hmm.
So we would not be delegating to an outsider, the judgment. But again, I'd like both of you guys to think through, what's the best thing to do. We've been lucky so far not to have any cases.
Yeah. So the pros and cons would be, the con would be the $1,500 or $3,000
Yeah.
cost. The pros would be that we'd have somebody that with experience doing it and consistent with all the legal requirements.
Yeah.
And one of the cons against not doing it is that because we may have screwed up in the way we administered the hearing, we can effectively allow them to, win
Yep.
on appeal because we screwed up.
Yep.
That's pretty much it, or?
Yep, that's it.
Okay. I mean, it seems obvious that, you probably want to, it's probably worth the $1,500 or $3,000, whatever it costs for an appeal examiner to do it.
See, what we have now, in order to dodge this, is we don't make a decision at all on complaints.
Mhm.
If we think there's a reasonable basis, then we ask the town to file a complaint, I guess, in the district court without there ever having been a decision by the Ethics Commission. And it just occurred to me a little while ago that, well, it doesn't have to be this extreme. We might be able to, hire somebody to properly hold a hearing while we then could make the decision, which would, if we're lucky or we do the job very well, there's no, the person wouldn't appeal because it's clear. No. Fred, do you have any thoughts?
The question I was holding back and ask is, I see that you have a difference in how things would be handled depending upon whether or not there is a material dispute of fact.
Yeah.
And what I was going to ask you is, how do you get to that point in knowing whether there is a material dispute in fact?
Okay, that's a good question, but I think one easy situation is where nobody claims there's a dispute as to the facts. You had a complainant and a respondent, and they both agree that Jerry Smith works for the ABC Corporation. And that the ABC Corporation, has a $5 contract with the town. That's the facts. I guess that's the easy answer. That may not be a sufficient answer because there's a big legal judgment. The word material fact, or phrase material facts, is it a fact that would affect the final judgment of the dispute?
Right.
I know that there's trillions of dollars spent on lawyers on this every year on precisely this issue. That's what summary judgment
Right.
is all about.
Well, we can also.
I'm pretty sure that we would make the three of us would make a judgment, and what I'd foresee is we tell the parties we don't see any material facts in dispute, and one of them says yes there is, because the question of sometimes is material. Then we have to make a judgment there. And
Yeah, so really these things can be fleshed out in the rules of procedure. Yeah, how, yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and here you're just laying out the parameters of a program, and giving you all the enabling authority as to how to carry it out. But the details, like what you and I are talking about right now, Phil, how do you know whether there's a dispute of fact? What kind of proof is there going to be? What kind of all of that can be handled, in the rules of procedure. In terms of process, I have never been a fan of the way it's being done now, where the commission is taken entirely out of the process of making a determination whether there's been a violation. I think this may be a reasonable compromise. So I do give you a lot of credit for coming up with this and broaching this subject again, because I do think that is first and foremost because the commission is the agency that has supposedly great knowledge and expertise about these ethics issues, that it should be you and not the circuit court that's going to make the initial judgment and decision as to any complaint.
Ingrid, Mike.
Yeah.
All right. So let's Ingrid.
I don't have anything really to add.
Okay, so think this through and discuss it with spouses and children and friends before
Topic
the
for
next.
dinner.
Yeah. Okay. Next item on the agenda is schedule the next regular meeting maybe early December or mid-December.
How about the second week of December? Does that sound?
You're out then?
No, I'll be, the first 2 weeks of December are probably best for me.
Okay, let me get a
Right.
calendar, I'm sorry.
Second week of December is probably best.
Okay, second.
That's the week of the 7th, Mike?
Yeah.
How's that work for you, Fred?
Yeah, I am fine as of this moment every day. I prefer not to do it on the 9th because I have a couple of virtual, we'll play the Board of Appeals hearing that night. So Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, any of those are okay.
Maybe we can shoot for the 8th.
Is that Tuesday? Ingrid?
Yes.
That's Tuesday.
Yep, that sounds good to me.
Sharon, that work on your end?
Sharon.
Yep. I don't have anything on my calendar for the 8th.
I'm good on the 8th as well.
Well, it sounds like it's a party.
All right.
Sounds good.
1
1
o'clock?
o'clock?
Clock.
1
Okay,
o'clock?
guys, this is, actually write that on the calendar right now. Oh, that's Pearl Harbor Day.
The 7th is at Pearl Harbor.
Depends on what time of day.
Oh,
Wasn't it, it was the 7th in Hawaii, but the 8th here? Check that. I was born in a hospital in Hawaii. My mom said that there were still you could see with the bullet holes or what had been, where it had been shot up. So there.
Wow, that's kind of cool.
that is-
Okay, anyone have any comments, either members of the public or members of the commission or the attorneys or anybody?
No, I don't.
Nope,
Nope.
fine.
Okay, all in favor of adjourning indicate by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The ayes have it. Thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Phil. Thanks, everybody. Be
Yep.
healthy and safe.
Yep,
Yeah.
take care. Enjoy.
Bye.
Have a good holiday.
Yeah, you too, Sharon. And Ingrid.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks, Sharon.
Bye, Ingrid.
Have a good Thanksgiving.
You too.